On this week's mini episode, we're going to be talking with Baptiste Darson about packaging the FreeBSD-based system with Package-ng. Is this the best way going forward, or are we getting dangerously close to being Linux-like? We're going to find out and also get to a couple of your emails while we're at it on BSD Now, the place to be. SD. BSD Now, episode 84, Package Remove FreeBSD Update, recorded for April 8th, 2015. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
I'm glad to have you guys with us this week. We're recording a tad bit early. It's actually Saturday the 4th here, so not quite a full week since our last episode, but that's being done. Alan agreed to come on and do this, which I appreciate, Alan's, because I'm going to be out of town next week. So we're taking a little vacation, and we'll be back for the usual show the following week. But we don't want to leave you guys hanging. There's still news and stuff happening. Like, even though it's only been, 3 days since the previous episode, there's still quite a bit of news that's come out. So we will bring you up to speed on that here. So let's get started with it. First up, we have some Zen news, Alan. So what's going on? I know we've heard DOM0 had made it into FreeBSD 11 current, but there's been some other developments.
Yeah, so the DOM0 support has been in FreeBSD-head for a little while now. But at Asia BSDCon, Roger, the guy that did most of the work, said, it'd be much easier if all the setup and the setting up of the tool stack and all that, including CBIOS and a bunch of the GPLv3 bits that can't be put into the base, could just be a port. BAPT, and I think, I had asked Brett Davis to look at it, but BAPT worked on it, and now there is a port you can just install, and it gives you all the stuff you need, and you'll be able to just have Zen. Nice. BAPT wanted because of the way the Zen works, you actually load a Zen module, and as if it was the FreeBSD kernel, and then it loads the FreeBSD kernel.
Sure.
And so he wanted a menu option in the BSD menu that would give you the option to not load the Zen part and just boot regular FreeBSD in case something goes wrong. And you just, if it won't boot because of Zen, you can fall back to just booting regular FreeBSD.
So, get to a working system somehow.
Exactly. He asked me to do it for some reason. And I got a little bit of help from Devin Teskey. I wrote up a thing, and it mostly worked, but I had a couple nits. So I got Devin to help me out, and we got that done, and it's part of the package. And so now, as soon as you install the package, you get this extra menu option.
Nice. Oh, that's definitely really cool. Yeah, that's something we're excited to have too here. I know it uses multi-boot for that, so that's something we're looking to get added to Grub so it can multi-boot FreeBSD as well. Obviously, it does that on Linux. It multi-boots Linux kernel already, but the FreeBSD support needs to be added still. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll do that as well. But that's exciting. It was neat to see him running Zen there. He did a demo at Asia BSDCon on a little Intel NUC, and it just worked.
Yeah,
I tried it out here on one of my systems, and it worked quite well.
Obviously the biggest thing was that it supports Windows as well, and it has the VNC backend. So, he just had the NUC there. He booted it up over, logged in from his laptop, logged into the NUC over SSH, started up the VMs, then fired up a VNC session off his laptop and connected to the VM and played Solitaire on Windows XP. Because that was the VM.
If you're going to play it might as well be on XP.
If you're going to use Windows, what are you going to use it for other than to play Solitaire?
That's right. That's right.
Windows is for games. That's Solitaire. It's a little more limited than Beehive for hardware support. You need Intel with EPT and an IOMMU and so on. It doesn't currently support AMD yet, but I think that's underway. And so it's kind of interesting how this interacts or competes with Beehive in that, Zen's been around longer. There's a more mature tool stack and it boots Windows, but Beehive has a bunch of interesting things of its own. And it'll be interesting to see maybe some of the performance differences between the two as well.
Yeah, we'll start seeing some benchmarks, I'm sure, show up before too long. And it's neat because they're two different approaches too, right? You got Beehive, which is more loaded with after the FreeBSD kernel as a module, and then Zen, which gets loaded before. It's kind of a top level deal. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the benchmarks turn out and how that pans out in the future. I know I would be excited if we get PCI Express pass through at some point.
Yes.
Working for VGA,
Yeah,
in
especially if
particular,
Zen
have
could do
evil
that,
schemes.
then
Yeah. Well, a lot of us still game,
yes.
right?
And
And being able to not have to dual boot and just fire up a Windows VM and pass it through a nice, beefy graphics card that we don't use for all of our work and stuff, but only want to fire up to play a game would be really cool.
Yeah.
So I would, if anybody makes that happen, let me know. I would love to see that as soon as possible.
Yep.
So,
Also, if you want more details, the Zen Wiki has some information on running Zen in general, and also has a page for FreeBSD. And
nice.
that also reminds me that NetBSD has had support for Zen DOM 0 for a long time. And there's a link to that on the NetBSD page as well. From these, it's right there on the front page of the Zen Wiki.
Okay, well, very cool. Okay, well, next up we have a cool blog post called A Tale of Two Educational Moments. And this is a blog post from an OpenBSD developer, which I believe was Brian Kalla. Was that?
I think that, yes, I think this is him.
Okay. And talking about some of the experiences he had helping people getting involved with the project. And the way it's laid out, it's split into two stories, one that could have gone better, which is a good learning experience, and then one that went really well. So kind of a what to do, what not to do. So for the first one, he found someone was trying to modify a package from their ports tree to have fewer dependencies. And then, in this case, it says experience really showed its worth. He was able to write a quick patch to do exactly what the other person had been working on for a few hours, but wasn't so encouraging about getting it committed. And they're basically trying to set flavors, I believe.
Yeah, they were trying to make
call like an X11, no X11 version of a port.
Yeah, so VNstat, which I think we had actually showed off on one of the very early tutorials we did, depends on X. And it actually, I had the problem that when I had installed OpenBSD on the virtual machine I was using for the tutorial, I chose not to install X. And so then the VNstat package didn't work. So I had the exact
GE
same,
and then TIFF and all kinds of stuff, right?
I had the exact same problem this guy was having, I imagine. And he decided he wanted to fix it. And so he did that. And so it says, it just uses the libc, libm, and libp threads. Excuse me.
Nice.
If you're not using X11, and then if you are, then it pulls in X11 and GD and all that fun stuff.
All the other bits. Well, that's cool. I wonder if, when we end up doing flavors in FreeBSD, if we'll do something similar. Maybe just have a couple master ones we set, like X11, no X11.
Right. Well, because I had actually asked Brian Drury about could we make our Poudriers do an extra run with just the no X11 flag set. But he's like, there are too many packages that don't understand it. Specifically, any of the packages that are about X don't understand how to build X without X, right?
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I'll just build my own and overlay it.
Yeah. Well, in the second part of this blog post, he ends up discussing updating a different port with a user on the forums, and he ends up improving the user's workflow quite a bit with just a couple easy tips. So the lesson we're kind of taking away from that one is that we can all encourage and assist new users. Everyone is a newbie once. We all started somewhere. We all remember our first time at the command prompt and typing in ls and thinking how weird that is because we came from DOS and you typed in dir, but whatever. That was a long time ago. But yeah, we all had to start there at some point. Although I think nowadays, like my kids don't have that experience. I don't think they've ever even seen a DOS terminal.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Bad. But they have a shell account, right?
They do.
Yes.
Yeah. Like they know how to do ls and cd and all that stuff.
That's the important thing.
Right?
Because DOS teaches you bad habits, like not needing a space between CD and the directory.
That's right.
Yeah.
But just a whole nother era. But anyway, yeah, so this is a great blog post if you want to read about some tips and how you can encourage and get involved in the community and make some forward progress with people, especially newbies who are just getting started.
Right.
A good way to do it.
That's
a way that didn't work so well.
Yeah. So that's the other thing is, if you're a newbie and you're reading this, especially in the case of the one where it didn't go very well, you can kind of get a better understanding that it's not that the people in the project don't want to help you or whatever. It's just people have bad days or. They say something and they don't mean it to be discouraging. It just seems discouraging when you're new. but they're very happy to help you where they can. So,
yep. Well, cool. I hope you guys enjoy that article. Next up, we got a little sneak peek of some more NetBSD 7 stuff. So we mentioned it, gosh, was it July 2014 was when we first mentioned NetBSD 7.0. But of course, it still hasn't been released yet. And there's not been a whole lot of public info.
Yeah, the most we ever got really was the work in progress presentation at Asia BSDCon during the closing ceremony, where they talked about how they're working on DRM and KMS and a bunch of other interesting stuff for what will be in NetBSD 7. Because that's when I learned that NetBSD actually has a port of ZFS, although it hasn't been worked on in a while, and it's based on like ZFS version 18 or something. It's way behind.
It's a little crafty.
Yeah, there are a lot of debug messages left. You load the module, and first of all, it's like, hey, this is like beyond experimental. Don't put any data into it. Yeah, but it was interesting to see that someone had at least started that work.
This one eats puppies still. It's bad.
I think it actually says something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of NetBSD 7, though, we have a new blog post which has come out talking about some of the bigger features that we can expect to see when it does eventually launch.
Including hitting 70 supported platforms.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically everything runs on NetBSD. I'm sure you could put it on your car at this point and run something there. But anyway,
I think a bunch of the computers in cars actually do use NetBSD.
See, there you go. I was just making a joke and it ends up being true. But yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And they have support for the Raspberry Pi 2, but they don't run all of the cores. They can currently only use one of the cores still. But there's a wiki entry where you can watch the progress on that, because I imagine that won't take very much longer for that to get going.
Somebody's going to want to get that fixed soon, I'm sure. Yeah. But also, there have been a lot of improvements in the graphics area, particularly with the porting of DRM and KMS. So they've added Linux Haswell and the Novo driver for NVIDIA cards. And many ARM boards now have full SMP support. So, hey, we were just talking about that. Yep. Also, Clang has made its way into the base system.
I didn't see that. And there's a link to their presentation from EuroBSDCon 2014 back in Bulgaria in November, talking about the toolchain on NetBSD. And they also say that NetBSD 7 will ship with GCC 4.8 and have full C++ 11 support. And then, as you said, they're working on Clang as well. And it's actually in the base system and works for AMD 64, i386, and ARM. They're still working on PowerPC and MIPS, though.
That's cool.
But it's good to have more people working on that, because I know the FreeBSD people are working on getting MIPS under Clang to happen as well.
Also, they've done some crypto updates. It looks like the RAM number generator is switched from the broken RC4 to the more modern Cha-Cha 20. And then OpenSSL has been updated in base, and LibreSSL is now in package source as well. So you have some options there.
Yep, I see they also implemented Realec R and Realec Array from OpenBSD, so that they have the compatibility to run LibreSSL and any programs that take advantage of that new API.
Nice. Wasn't that the one we just had a mailing list gold post about, that function name got chomped by something else?
There was an April Fool's joke about X11, yes.
Okay.
They also have a constant time comparison and guaranteed zeroing with crypto with the const time mem equals and explicit mem set.
Nice.
The reason for the explicit ones are normally a compiler will notice that, hey, you're overwriting all that data and then you're overwriting again later, so we can just skip the middle overwriting. And it's like, well, when it's crypto, I'm overwriting that for a reason. So how about you don't optimize that out, please?
Just do what I said to do, please.
I know you're trying to make my program faster, but in this case, I want it to be more secure instead. Yeah.
Also, it looks like their firewall's gotten a little bit of improvements since the initial debut of NPF on 6.0. Looks like they've done some changes to that.
Yes, and they also have just-in-time native code compiler for BPF, so that you can use the Berkeley packet filter format for rules. And they also link to their EuroBSDCon presentation on that. And their USB stack is now multiprocessor, so you can use more of your CPU to support your USB stuff.
Nice. Well, also, there's a list of some of the stuff that's probably not going to make it into 7. So first one on the list, of course, is Stables ZFS, so not quite yet. dtrace will not be on by default in the kernel, it sounds like. No NVIDIA graphics, multiprocessor network stack, newer Intel graphics from Linux 4.0 kernel, so no Broadwell. And also ARM v8.
FreeBSD still needs to catch up to as well.
Yeah, we're still working our way to the Haswells at the moment. Yeah. So, let's see, the NVIDIA Jetson TK1, RISC-V, OpenRISC, and much, much more. So, of course, they asked for donations to help keep the project going strong. And I will put out a challenge to you NetBSD folks. We know you're out there, and a number of you listen.
Yes.
Quit hiding. You guys need to come on the show and talk to us about this stuff.
Yes.
That way we can generate a little bit of interest and get some excitement going for the upcoming 7.0. I think you guys said take a little time. I swear it's an easy experience.
Yes, I'd love to talk to whoever's working on dtrace or ZFS or any of this stuff.
Heck, I would like to talk to the guys doing the video graphics. Yeah. Just what's your experience been porting that over from Linux, and what route did you take doing that? So,
and how did you finish it faster than we did?
Yeah. Not
what can we learn from? What can we learn from you?
Right. We'll just start handing out candy like FreeBSD. Yeah. Come on. But anyway, no, seriously, guys. If you'd like to come on, it's an easy experience, and we'd look forward to talking to you guys more about NetBSD.
We would.
Okay, well, next up, we have some other ZFS stuff happened already this week, and we mentioned it in last week's episode, but OpenZFS held their office hours. So we mentioned a couple weeks back that the ZFS office hours series was starting back up, and they had it, Thursday?
It was on Thursday, yes. I think this was their fourth one. They've mostly meant to be like quarterly. It's just so far been hard to make it happen. But thanks to Justin and some other people getting that organized, we managed to have one on Thursday, and it was quite good. We had Matt Ahrens and George Wilson, who've both been on the show before, there, and then Justin Gibbs and some people from various other companies that are doing stuff with ZFS. And it was good to get to talk to those people, and I found it very useful to get to ask them a bunch of questions, including I asked one of Chris's questions, although I don't think that one actually made it onto the live stream. Because I asked it in the IRC room, but most of my other questions did. And we did ask the question one of our users had asked last week about using ZFS inside on the guest and outside on the host. So basically ZFS on ZFS when you're using virtualization. And
what was the answer on that, the definitive answer from the guys now?
It would be better if you could avoid it. Basically,
what, using ZFS on ZFS or just?
Well, ZFS works best when it's talking directly to the hardware. So when ZFS is hidden inside the virtualizer, basically, if you could take out the layer where you're emulating a hard drive that ZFS is talking to in the guest, especially with like Beehive, something like doing the diskless type where you boot a kernel and then pull everything over NFS, so that you're just talking directly to ZFS underneath. Justin talked about it quite a bit because, but both Matt and Justin, I think George, all had quite a bit of experience of virtualization with ZFS, so they provided a bunch of useful tips.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess that makes sense too. And then you need, for each client, you need separate memory caches and whatnot. ARCs.
Yeah. Whereas if you can,
that's wasted space.
It can be better. Yeah. We also talked about getting patches into the different projects and stuff. Justin Gibbs has got some code that he did for, not just him, but the company he works at, SpectraLogica, did. It was the very second presentation I ever saw at a BSD conference. My first BSD can. It was the second presentation of the morning, talking about, all right, so there's ZFS, and you have this 128K block size, and what happens when you want to change the middle 16 kilobytes of it? Well, you have to read the whole 128K in, modify it, and then write it all out again. And they had come up with this optimization that allowed them to just write the 16K that changed and not have to deal with the rest of it. And to like kind of background the updating of the updating the checksum and so on, so that it would perform a lot better when you're doing that. The problem is that when they worked on it, OpenZFS wasn't the thing yet. Oracle hadn't actually closed source ZFS yet. And so to make it easier for them to maintain it in their product, they kind of reorganized some of the ZFS code. And so their patch doesn't really apply back into ZFS. And so they've, but now that OpenZFS is a thing, they've kind of had to forward port it anyway. So they're hoping to keep working on it and eventually get that patch back up in so everybody can have it.
Oh, nice.
And then there was some other stuff like Matt Ahrens was talking about. He saw a patch with a copyright date of 2013 that he finally got committed recently. and talking about the kind of the process there and how it's not great yet, but lots of good stuff is going on in ZFS, and they're hoping to get more and more of it available to everybody as quickly as possible. Because someone in the chat room had actually asked, it seems FreeNAS gets these ZFS features faster than FreeBSD, and it's like, well, not exactly. They usually go into FreeBSD head about the same time because the work's done usually.
They just backport them like 10 minutes later.
Usually the work is done by Xin Li, and he puts it into the FreeBSD head as well. It's just, as a regular end user, you don't see that until the next 10.x release, which is only once every 6 months or whatever. So you can get that latest, greatest ZFS. You just have to run the current branch, and there'll be dragons there some days.
Yes.
But anyway, there was talk about that, talking about getting more people involved, and talking about also shingled magnetic storage, the new SMR drives, and how that might play out. And Justin brought up a good example of he expects to see a bunch of academic papers and stuff looking at this type of thing coming up relatively soon. And I think that some of the experimentation might actually take place on top of ZFS because it's a reliable block store that people can build things on. It's kind of even just for object storage or whatever. And because, trying to build something as good as ZFS from scratch is getting to the point of being impossible at this point. For anything ever catching up to ZFS. And Matt Aarons is like, well, yeah, he did a little bit of rough math on it recently and figured that ZFS contains more than 100 engineer years of work. So that would take a lot of people a lot of time to catch up on.
Wow.
Because if you think about that, even if you had a team of 100 people, it would take them 3 years of working 8 hours a day to generate 100 years of work.
Oh, wow.
And at the same time, ZFS is still moving, even probably faster now than it was before, because there's more development in more different places. And so, at this point, anything catching up to ZFS seems relatively unlikely.
Yeah. Well, that is good to hear. It looks like this video was about an hour long, so you can definitely catch that if you want to hear about all sorts of nitty-gritty and everything ZFS.
There was also talk about how to speed up the resilvering process, specifically. Currently, it's got a lot of random I/O, and they're talking about ways they'd be able to change it to streaming, especially for mirrors. And they talked about some of the limitations of the device removal code that's coming in, and there was all kinds of good discussion.
Well, how about ZFS?
That was also mentioned in there. And Justin hopes maybe by the end of this year it can be ready to go.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's good. I will be looking forward to seeing that go in. Okay, so before we go to our interview this week with Baptiste, we do want to mention our first sponsor on the show, which is going to be IX Systems. And the URL for that is ixsystems.com/BSD Now, where you want to go and get fill out the form, download the guide, which will teach you how to
convince your manager.
Talk to vendors, what to... how to speak to your manager, and selecting the right vendor for an open source platform solution, and why IX is the perfect choice for your business.
Basically, it gives you the questions to ask yourself or your manager or whoever's trying to convince you to buy from Dell, why IX is better, and kind of the differences you get. Like, when you call the support, the person you talk to actually knows what ZFS is, and knows that FreeBSD is a thing and that it's not a distro of Linux. But also, IX does support Linux stuff, right? They do. We showed off that big hardware they built recently, and that's actually running Arch Linux. So it's they specifically say the ultimate guide for buying a new server for open source, because it's anything open source.
That's right. But these guys know and breathe open source, and they will find the solution that works for you. So whether it's on FreeBSD or another BSD or Linux or whatever, they can make that all happen. But they will do that to your specifications as well. So if you call up and say, I have a specific problem we're trying to solve, this is the minimum requirements I need, or the minimum
performance or
feature set or performance or whatever that I need to be able to support, they will design a solution which does just that. And these sales guys know what they're talking about. They're not just going to be looking at the catalog and trying to ship you something that's sitting on the back shelf that was made 3 months ago.
All the people have experience as being a sysadmin or a server administrator or doing with the hardware, and they will actually know the answers to most of your questions. And if not, they
right.
have a deep enough bench, there will be someone there that will be able to answer the question.
That's right. That's right. So again, go to ixsystems.com/BSD Now and do let them know we sent you. We would appreciate that. We're joined now by Baptiste Derosson. So did I say that right?
Yeah.
Close enough? That's horrible, right?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay. But he's the author of Package NG, and he's been working on that, what is it, 5 years now?
It's almost 5 years. It will be 5 years in July.
Wow. Well, congratulations, first of all. That's an impressive milestone. But he's going to be talking to us today a little bit about packaging base. Which, we heard a little bit about this at the Developer Summit a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And tell us what that's all about.
Well, that's all about trying to make upgrading the system easier for users. I mean, FreeBSD-update is really nice, but it can be very slow if you go from an old version to a newer version of FreeBSD. And in the matter of the people that want to share the packages, making a FreeBSD-update server is quite hard. And with packaging base, we can do that in a simpler fashion. The other idea is to properly track every file on the base system. Make sure that we remove old file when we do an upgrade. Make sure that you can also have more flexibility because of packaging base. I mean, we will split the base system into multiple packages. So if you just want part of the base system because, I don't know, you're running an embedding system, then you want something small, when you want to build your own world yourself, then you just pick up the packages you need, install them into your system, and you have a smaller installation.
Right, and make everything more modular.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how many modules or what type of modules are you thinking then? Like kernel, obviously, and other stuff?
Yeah, so we're still in the early ages, so we don't know yet. Probably 11 we'll have a couple of modules, and on 12 maybe more. We don't know yet. So we have a trade-off to do, which is some users want to get the full FreeBSD base system as it is, so we need to provide a package which will install all as a dependency everything like if it was the base system as it is now. Then we want to split all this thing into little pieces, because if you have a security update, you just want to update OpenSSL or OpenSSH.
You almost stuck a LibreSSL in there.
So you want to be able to just upgrade the small bits you need instead of having to upgrade the full base system each time, which could be painful for the users and bandwidth consuming.
Right, and I guess that kind of raises the question, if we break the things up like that, would it be possible for users to decide to switch from OpenSSL to LibreSSL just by swapping?
In theory, yes. One of the reasons why we want to package base is we want to be able to experiment things and to provide binaries for people to experiment with that. For example, if someone is, the first use case for that was libc++. If you want to provide a new version of libc++ to users without committing it yet into head, because I don't know, it's not fully ready yet, or before MFC you want to make sure that everything is okay, then you can prepare a package, put it somewhere, and point the people to that repository and say, okay, if you want to be the beta tester for this or this new part of the system, then you can just get there. So you can imagine, yes, providing LibreSSL and saying to users, okay, go into add this repository, package install LibreSSL, it will discover that OpenSSL should be removed, for example, and that allows you to test in real environment without having to build, without having to go through complex procedure to just allow you to test things.
Yeah, I can see for like head, instead of a user having to download the source and then apply a developer's patch, the developer could just have done a build and say, here,
exactly,
drop this on top.
The other important things that will be available and possible because we package base is we'll be able to provide packages to track different in development branches, which means stable and current, so that we could have more user testing stable, more user testing current without having to build a world and to reinstall everything. So just, okay, I was on 10.1 and I want to track what stable is. I just change my repository to point to stable, package upgrade, and then you get into stable.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking ahead of time too, like at multiple kernels, for example.
For-
Oh, you want this kernel with these options? I know we would really
Exactly.
love to do that kind of thing. So that's fantastic. So you mentioned Package NG 1.5 is on the roadmap.
Yeah.
So some of the changes going into that, I assume, will help make this easier?
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking that package 1.4 would be enough for that, and I released package 1.4 to be able to work on this, and I quickly discovered that, yes, we are in better situation to package base with 1.4, but we are missing some bits. Package 1.4 had something which was needed for a base system, which is handling the immutable flags on the files, because on base system we have a couple of immutable flags, and we don't have this import, so package was not able to handle that first. And it worked pretty well, and except that when I first tried to really package base, I discovered that I had no way in the playlist to specify that this file would be immutable, and I needed to do that because when we package base, I want package base to work as a user or as a root. So as a user, you cannot set those flags on the file directly. In that case, we need to find a way in a plist or whatever to specify that this file, when it will be installed on the user end, it will have the immutable flags. So that's one of the things I added. The other thing is I added a couple of fixes on the three-way merge code we added in package 1.4. Because in base system we have all the configuration files which are quite tricky to handle, and we don't want any more users to use merge master, etc update, whatever.
Or the one that's building the FreeBSD update, which is slightly worse than merge master.
Yeah, so it's not very user friendly, and if you split things, then you don't have the full etc things to be able to do the diff and merge and whatever. So what we ended up is extracting the three-way merge from the fossil VCS, which is very good, and we extracted the code. We took it into a package and tweak it so that it works with package itself. So now, when you do package upgrade, it automatically merge things if it can. If it can, if it cannot, you will just have a new file, name of your configuration file .new, so that you can do the merge yourself because you were in a special situation.
Okay, fantastic. Will there be any special kind of handling for, say, when you do a major revision from 10.1 to current or something? Will it then also trigger an update of the packages, your regular packages, not the base system?
Yeah, it will be fully automatic because you will first do your upgrade to base system. Then the next time you run package, it will discover that you are on 11 instead of being on 10. So package upgrade, we will want to reinstall everything because you do not have the same API. So best would be to chain both, but it can get complicated to discover at this moment. I think it's okay to say, okay, you're going to merge a version, then type twice package upgrade, and think later how we can chain both into one single command so it's easier for users.
I also heard you mention a bit about being able to install a system from package into like a CH root or a different directory.
Yes. So one of the things now that I'm hacking on the build system to try to make everything create packages, one of the things I discovered that the shroud support we have right now in package is not convenient. It's good enough. You can create a shroud which will be a future environment easily, but it's not very convenient. We can do something better. In particular, we can do. We need to be able to do a cross installation, at least for the base system packages. So one of the changes that is coming along with 1.5 is a new package -r for roots. A directory which will be a root directory. It will not do any chroot at all. It will just prefix all the files to go there. And we added to the script environment a couple of variables so that the script can be aware that they are installing for a system which will be a big endian instead of little endian, or which will be this version of FreeBSD in this root or whatever. So now the script will just run the command from the host, but with the switches, so that, for example, if you're creating the user database, then it's created in big endian if it's for ARM big endian, for example.
And I'm assuming that will work very nicely for jails as well?
Yeah,
you
sure.
could install a jail by installing it from the package.
Yeah, sure. Well, you can already do that now. I mean, you can start up an empty jail with persist, and then you can do package-gel and install something. It works.
Right.
And that's why in package we have something I think probably none of the users have seen, but there is a name server thing, which is basically injecting the DNS server you're willing to get to be able to install packages, so that you don't have to pre-populate the jail.
Resolve.conf in the jail
Yeah.
and so on,
Very nice.
So you can do that with that, but it will be more convenient with the new -R.
Yeah, and with the -R, I'm thinking like in the case of Poudre, where you want to install a FreeBSD 9.3 jail and a 10.1 jail on your 11 hosts
Yeah.
to build packages for all your different versions. And so
Yeah, you will use -R for that. The other point of -R is because it doesn't call any jail syscall or chroot, then not for 1.5, probably from 1.6, I will make sure that it can also generate an entry file so that you can populate a system, a jail, or a future system as a user, and keep all the credentials into an entry file so you can run makeFS on it, create your image, and do all the stuff as a user.
Right, so you can create disk images or
Exactly.
VM images without even having to be root.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
That'd
cool.
be awesome.
So I know the user's going to ask, what's the timetable like? When can people start maybe getting their hands on this?
Well, I'm giving a talk in BSD Can about packaging base. So basically, we need to have packaging base usable by BSD Can, which means around June.
Okay.
Well, it will be a first shot on it. I
Sure.
mean, right now we're experimenting a lot. We are still in the early ages, and I want to get something people can test for May or June, so that we can get further and decide the final design and where we want to go. And my goal is to by EuroBSDCon having a beta version, basically a beta version which would be the final version, I hope, so that we get 6 more months to test to make sure that everything is okay before 11.0 is released.
Right, which would be the summer of 2016.
I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
somewhere in 2016.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us today and telling us about what's coming down the pike with Package NG.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Baptiste. It's always fun to hear what's happening in Package NG land and some of the exciting changes coming up. We're going to discuss that in a moment, but before we do want to mention one of the other sponsors this week, of course, which is DigitalOcean, who still has that FreeBSD Now coupon code you can use. So you need to do that. You know, if you want to do it just for your own personal enjoyment, you know, next time you have some time on your weekend or your evening, fire it up. Go on there, sign up. You know, set up a new FreeBSD VM. Takes less than a minute, and you can set it up in multiple locations anywhere across the world. So it's kind of neat if you want to replicate some stuff offsite or whatever, or mess around with something that's far away or close, whatever. It's all there and spinning on not spinning in this case, on an SSD.
Yes.
So much quicker. So anything you want to add to
They
that,
just they have a really good API, but they just released their new V2 API after 9 months of being in beta. It introduces
What does
a
that
bunch
change
of
for
new
us?
features that you couldn't get in V1, and also maintaining a level of simplicity that's very easy to use. It supports OAuth, so it's easier to authorize people to do stuff, and also has pagination features so that you can break the results up. So if you're using their API to build a version of their control panel for your customers, if you're reselling or something like that, you don't have to do the pagination on your side. You can just request the data from them in the chunks instead of downloading all of it and then only using one chunk of it or whatever.
Oh,
It works better.
Well,
and
that's
they
nice.
added even more RESTful interface stuff. And they also remind people that they have the user voice feature where you can request features and stuff, and then they get voted on, and each customer gets 10 points, and you spend those points on which ideas you think are important. That's how FreeBSD support made it at DigitalOcean, and it had the most votes by a lot. And then once they accept the idea, you get the points back and get to spend them on something else.
Nice. Wow. If somebody wants to lobby for OpenBSD support or
Exactly.
something, maybe that would be the way to do it. Go vote for that.
They've also increased the base rate limit, so you can do more API commands, improved the documentation, added more information to the user endpoint, so you can get more information about specific users and so on. And they've also added stronger validations to the droplet creation process so that you can't accidentally create a droplet that won't work and end up with a failure.
Sure.
And they point you to the new V2 documentation, which includes some example curl requests so that you can see how it works. Instead of just explaining this is what you have to do, it's like, and here's an example. And then they have their metadata API, OAuth, etc.
Nice. Well, again, go check it out, digitalocean.com. Get signed up now and spin up that VM. Start messing around with that. But that's awesome that they support FreeBSD. And of course, if you do talk to those guys, let them know that you heard it today on BSD Now.
They also mentioned they have pre-built libraries for Go, Ruby, Java, PHP, Python, more PHP, more Python, Windows.Net, Clojure, Node.js, Haskell, Perl. So Scala, whatever you happen to be building your product in, there's already a library set up to provide you all the DigitalOcean API stuff instead of you don't have to write your own.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's a huge chunk of the work right there. You can actually get to working on your product and not just writing the interface library. That's really cool. Okay, so we have a discussion up next here, Alan, where we're going to talk a little bit about what we heard in the interview moment here about packaging the FreeBSD base system with package-ng, kind of a follow-up.
We've got quite a few questions about it, and we thought we'd just talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of dispel some of the myths about it or whatever, and talk about why we're looking forward to it. So I guess I'll go ahead and start with this. But from my perspective, being the lead guy for PCBSD, from a distributor point of view, it makes a lot of sense for us, right? We've been using FreeBSD-update for a couple years now, maybe 3 years. And it's, while it worked and got the job done, it's definitely getting a little long in the tooth. And doing the actual updates with it is a little bit more of a chore.
Yeah, especially from your side, it's quite a bit of extra work, eh?
It is a lot of extra work. So I have to run it in a VM now because it does all these weird things where it does the build once, and then it changes the time, sets it a year and some odd in the future, does the build again, checks timestamps, and tries to figure out what the diffs are between the files at that point, and then some manual stuff to upload at that point and sign. And it's a little very cumbersome, I guess would be the best way to put it. So not that it doesn't work, but it takes a lot of my time. Every time there's a security update on FreeBSD or something comes out, I'm like, I got to push out FreeBSD updates. And we do that, but it would be nice to switch to something which works a little bit more like package. I mean, that we're basically doing two package systems at this point. We're doing FreeBSD update to do the base system stuff, and then package for everything else. So from my perspective, it would be real nice to have just one utility, one source of truth that could do everything from the kernel updates to a security update, maybe for OpenSSL in the base system or whatever, and it all comes in via one command. And for me, we're doing all our packages are built in Poudre now. So having the base system be a package as well, I'm already envisioning where I just feed Poudre, here's my world, or here's my source tree for FreeBSD, and here's my ports tree, and it spits out packages for the base and packages for everything else, and then I can just upload those and away they go, like done.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm looking for, not having to spin up a separate VM just to do the base system updates and all that jazz. And you have to manually copy patches in, and that gets a little tedious on the FreeBSD update side. So I'm already envisioning like how we would automate this and just make it where in Jenkins I can click a button and then packages go out with the updates.
I think
that would make my life a lot easier.
I think it'll definitely simplify the process for the FreeBSD security team as well. Currently, one of the reasons why security updates take so long to come out, even when we had advanced warning, it still took another extra day to get it out because the FreeBSD update builds take so long because you're building the whole thing multiple times to do the comparisons, and then they have to do that for every supported version. Whereas with Poudre, they would just do the build world once. And I think that could result in our getting security patches turned around a lot quicker.
I agree. And another interesting thing it opens up is with packages being able to do different repos. Setting up configuring your client to talk to a new repo is really trivial. All of a sudden, this opens the door for, hey, I want to pull from this repo, which has a custom kernel now with different flags set or different options that work better for me. Or if I want to roll my own, again, Poudre can do that for me. Makes it super simple. And just stuff that I don't know of too many people using FreeBSD update out there. I mean, there's a handful, but running it from the server side, this just seems a lot simpler. Like all of a sudden,
FreeBSD Update has worked well for me. I have a machine I've upgraded since FreeBSD 6.1 every release all the way up to 9.3, and it works. But it really only works if you're following just the release and you haven't done anything custom at all.
Sure.
Where these packages, one of the biggest things is that they'll be able to do builds of the stable and current branches. We have these snapshot ISOs you can download, which is great for testing or whatever, but I can't upgrade my current running server to that very easily. Or if I install the snapshot, I have to erase it 2 weeks later when I get a new snapshot. Whereas
we're doing that with FreeBSD Update right now, and it's not pleasant to do current like a rolling release type current with FreeBSD Update, because every time we do a monthly one, right, and it's a fair amount of my time. It's like, okay, I need to fire up another VM, get FreeBSD Update installed in it, do an init, build the world initially, and all this stuff to upload just the world and stuff before I even get around to doing the packages, right? And it's just not as convenient. And I know for a fact there's a lot of people out there who are like, well, I'd like to have these flags or these options, and we could just pass them the source tree and say, here you go, put your own kernel config on top of Git or whatever, and done. Roll your own packages. Finished.
It would be great. And it would also, I think, one of the biggest problems that I've seen, the biggest complaint I've seen with FreeBSD Update is the spurious error messages from the things that were never supposed to happen, basically. So when FreeBSD Update was written, it was basically the idea is installing security patches. So new files would never get added as part of a security update. As part of an upgrade, sure, but as part of a security update, it wouldn't. Well, OpenSSL has broken that a couple of times. Because OpenSSL doesn't release a security update. They just release the next version with the security update in it. And so 2 or 3 times now, it has added an extra file or two of source code. And the FreeBSD Update tool didn't understand that I don't have the source tree installed, and so it keeps on this error. I failed to install user source contrib OpenSSL, some long file name. It's like, well, yeah, that failed because my user source directory is empty. It's like I didn't. The source set is turned off. Just leave it alone. But
we worked around that. We just changed our FreeBSD-update.conf to not even try to do source.
Right. It probably didn't really make sense to do the source.
Well, I guess we figured if you're smart enough,
but yeah, exactly.
We figured if you're smart enough to check out the source yourself and you're doing stuff in source, you're smart enough to update that on your own. Like you can go do an SVN update or a git pull or whatever.
Or, just pull it from the Relling branch or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think recently it happened again with the time zone data. It's like, yes, sometimes new time zones get created.
Well, another thing is too working with jails, right? So we've done some hacks with Warden to be able to use FreeBSD updates and kind of like a boot environment for jails to be able to upgrade or update a jail's world environment. It's really hackish though. And looking at something like Package, which kind of understands jails just out of box, and that was a concept which was designed into the packaging system. I'm already envisioning being able to update jails much easier, just again with the package upgrade command, like you would when you're updating Apache or something. Like, ooh, there's a new kernel version with a security update. Bam, grabs that, or well, in jail the kernel wouldn't matter, but whatever. So some part of the base system needs a
that's usually the biggest complaint with EasyJail is that it uses FreeBSD update and installs my new system, but it doesn't deal with my etc files. Package 1.5, as Baptiste mentioned, stole the code for three-way merging from Fossil, which is a source code management kind of like Git, and it has a very good three-way merge. And so it will try to merge, and if it can't, it just leaves the file there, and it's up to you to do it. But it seems like that will make jail management that much easier. And then the other thing you mentioned is that you can do an install with the -R thing, and basically do an install of the base system into some directory. And it seems like you'll be able to just build your jail by just saying, package install the whole FreeBSD operating system in this directory, and boom, there's a jail.
Done. And I imagine even doing like cross jails, like grab a 32-bit jail off of a 64-bit host. Like it seems like this will be a lot
cross
easier
version.
to do.
I can see Poudriere using this. Hey, I need a FreeBSD 8.4, a 9.3, and a 10.1 jail. Bam, 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 done. And the other one Baptiste mentioned was the -R flag was actually designed for doing cross installs like that. For hey, I'm sitting on my
Like
ARM 60 or on my AMD 64 machine. I need to install an ARM-based system into this directory so I can make an image I can write to this SD card to boot my Raspberry Pi off of. And it'll be able to just do that instead of, currently it's like, well, I'm going to go over to this server over here where I have 24 cores to compile the Raspberry Pi version and then write the stick and then download it and put it in my machine. But if I can just grab the latest head from a week ago or whatever via package, install it onto an SD card with package, and then stick it in my Pi, that'll be so much easier.
Sure. Well, I know there have been some concerns that have come up. We're going to have a feedback question that got sent in here in a little bit too, talking about, well, is this making FreeBSD more Linux-like? AKA, is everything switching to packages now? And you have a package for your kernel and a package for this. And I don't see that happening because I think the world and kernel are all still being developed in one coherent manner, and 10.1 is still 10.1. No matter how many chunks we break it up into to distribute it and to install it on the system, it was still released as 10.1.
And this definitely isn't going that far. Like on a Linux, each command each tool you have is a separate package. Like, I think LS and a couple other ones come as one little set, but I think core utils or whatever. But most of the stuff comes with, like, wget is one package and so on. With this change to FreeBSD, fetch probably won't be its own separate package. There'd be.
But even if it was, it would still be the fetch from 10.1 with the 10.1 world with the 10.1 kernel.
And more specifically, your packages that you get from the port street, the third-party stuff, will still live under user local, and the stuff that's part of FreeBSD will live in the base system.
Now, where I can see this being really helpful is for developers, right? So if things are packaged up a little better, for example, if the OpenSSL in base is its own package, if I'm a developer working on, say, putting LibreSSL in, for an example, it would make more sense. Now I can change the package, say, ooh, pull this LibreSSL instead and post my own repo somewhere and have people start playing with it and testing it. Like, it only has to change one package that it has to download to test this new image. So it just seems like it's going to make things a lot easier.
You remember the old service red ports that people would use to test ports? I'm kind of envisioning something now where currently when developers have some proposed patch to fix something, like the stuff for the Intel graphics or the fix for a router or whatever, or for PF, IPv6 fragmentation, all that stuff, they post a patch to a mailing list. And that requires users savvy enough and who have the free time and so on, to set up a machine, check out the source tree, apply the patch, compile the whole thing, and then test it. Well, if developers could submit a patch against head to a web service, and it would build a FreeBSD base repo and just give you a URL, and people could just add that to a config file and do package upgrade, and boom, be running that.
Well, I'd like to see it take it one step further, Alan. Let's make it where all branches in the FreeBSD tree, like the user project branches and whatnot, can be packaged as packages and are uploaded somewhere and signed with the same key. Like, it would be really cool to have that automated in some way. I know that's how our build scripts work. We just point it at a different branch and it does the same thing.
So just
that could be really cool.
For each over every branch and being like, here's all the branches, just point at whatever one you want.
Yeah, and then let the developers have like some flag or something they can issue to say, okay, rebuild this, or a command somewhere they run that says time to rebuild this branch and update those packages. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of neat possibilities that could come into play with this working. I imagine when it starts off, you'll see a bunch of wiki pages updated on the FreeBSD wiki, like, go here to get my repo with this and try this. But we'll see if it comes here in some coherent utility.
But yeah, I'm really envisioning this helping get patches tested a lot better. Because it'll be much easier for your average end user to just grab the latest graphics patch and try it out and report bugs and so on before it gets merged into head.
And might I mention, boot environments mean you could do that in a boot environment, boot into it. If it doesn't work, just throw it away.
Back. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's going to make testing and development a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah. And I think this will help FreeBSD get moving more rapidly. I think this will see... this will make it possible for more people to run 10 stable instead of 10.1 release, so that they'll be able to get those beehive changes sooner. They'll be able to get the new ZFS features sooner. It'll just we'll still have the release if people want us stuck on it. But exactly,
like it becomes a real thing now where you could install 11 because you need the latest Wi-Fi driver that's not going to be backported or something. You could run that for 6 months to a year until the .0 release comes out, and then you just switch to
importantly,
that.
you can get weekly updates.
Yeah, and keep getting updates the whole time while you're on that. So it's really cool, and it's neat and exciting to see this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's about all I had to say about this, Alan. I think anything else you want to mention before we
done the list? Nope, that's about
okay.
it. I think and we'd really like to hear what ideas other people have as far as being able to use a package-based system to do interesting things. I know part of the idea is that you'll be able to choose which parts of the system you want to install. Like, I don't need I don't need Clang. I'm not going to compile anything because this is an appliance, and so it will never compile anything. And just being able to build stripped down things for installs on little embedded platforms and so on.
Kind of like makes Nano BSD very doable.
Yeah, or kind of replacing some of those older tools with something that's more one size fits all and more standard and supported and not likely to be kind of going off in different directions and so on.
Nice. Okay, well, hope you guys enjoyed that. And again, we'd love to hear your comments on that or any ideas you may have. Send them in. Okay, so we got feedback and questions coming up, but before we do want to mention the other sponsor this week, which of course is TarSnap, and the URL for that, tarsnap.com/BSD Now, where you can go and get signed up, and literally you could do that before we finish talking about TarSnap here at the moment. It's going to be that quick.
It's a very easy process. You just deposit at least $5 and you're good to go. And the best part is that you don't have to do anything else, basically. It's really easy to use, similar to the tar command, which we all have used at this point, and it's super cheap. I haven't managed to spend $1 with it yet, and I've been using it since January.
Yep. So there's definitely no reason not to, guys. It's cheap, it's really easy to do, and you can trust that your data going off-site is going to be viewable only by you, because you have the key, unless, of course, you let that leak out somewhere, but don't do that. But by the same token, keep that key safe. I think Colin even mentions when you get set up to print it out.
Yeah,
so
because
that's a good idea.
Unlike other backup services, Colin doesn't have a copy of your secret key. So if you lose it, no one has it, and your files are as useless to you as they would be to the government if they tried to seize them. And that's why it's important that you back up that key in a safe way. And like Colin recommends that, printing that out and filing that in a safe deposit box or something is probably your best bet for that.
Good idea. Well, cool. Well, again, I hope you guys went and signed up while we were talking about it. You probably are already finished and reading the doc and setting up your first backup right now. But again, that's tarsnap.com/BSD Now, and let them know that we sent you. Okay, so our first question this week we have from Jeff, who's asking about Warden CPU usage. And he says, hey guys, I recently watched an episode on jails and went through BSD Now tutorial on using EasyJail. Although I have a lot of ideas for using jails now, I've only implemented a couple so far. Number one, I have a Gitto Lite jail running on a FreeBSD 10.1 box. Having a container for repos that can be archived and deployed and cloned using EasyJail is great. I've successfully done this and it was very quick, about 200 megabyte tar.gz. I also have a jail on my PCBSD workstation that has an Apache, MySQL, PHP stack running an old website that gets turned on a couple times a month. This saves me a lot of hassle when I get the call to turn it on, because the warden makes that task literally just a couple clicks. The media for this site is also in the jail, and the total size is around 30 gigabytes. He says it's GoPro videos. So exporting the jail, however, is taking a long time, a few hours. He said during the export, there's minimal disk activity, but one core was pegged, and BSD tar was using that. He said, I have two SSDs and a ZFS mirror and an AMD FX 8350. Is this performance expected? Can I do anything to speed it up? He said, overall, my experience getting to jails has been a positive one, and the tutorial and video helped quite a bit. It got me on track quickly. I tried VirtualBox before, but didn't have the same experience. Thanks for taking the question for the show. So we replied to him actually before mentioning this here on the air and kind of talked to him about it. So the reason for the PEG CPU was when you export a jail on Warden, it's trying to compress it by default. and you have 30 gigabytes of probably already compressed video, so that's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
In this case, it's using the --J flag for tar, which is
tar XZ, and it'd be
Yeah.
really interesting if tar and or one of the compressors like XZ or whatever. Well, yes, for XZ, because it's just a stream compressor, it doesn't know it's doing individual
Yeah.
files. But you know,
if it had a way
the
to
early
check and go,
abort,
let's skip
like
this, it's
like ZFS
pre-compressed.
has, right? Where it's like I start compressing the file. If it compresses less than 12%, then I just don't bother compressing it at all.
So we need LZ4 put into tar, is what you're
Kind of, except for basically.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it could do it
basically.
for, you'd set a block size like 128K or something, and each block, if it didn't compress well, it would just not compress it. So you get,
Sure.
not as good compressions as you get from XZ, but you would get you would get a better mix of performance and speed, or performance and latency or whatever.
So the solution we sent back to Jeff was two things he could do. First was tar out the compressed video files. He probably has those all in one directory where he could easily grab those, tar those, and send those over to the new box very easily, and
Just
obviously
not compress that.
just without compression, and then let the jail do its regular compression to save the space, because it's going to be doing all the world and all that jazz, packages and whatnot. The other alternative was we sent him the commands, or I sent him the commands, where he could manually do the same thing without compression, compress the entire, or tar up the entire jail,
without
and just
the
move it
compression?
over manually.
Yep.
Without the compression,
Yeah, 'cause-
and including all the metadata and everything as well.
Because I'm guessing,
which-
most of the times your jail's not going to compress that much. And
No, it depends really on what you have in there. If it's obviously a lot of compressible like websites and HTML files and whatnot, sure.
yeah,
but
sure, those have a
yeah.
very good compression ratio, but even uncompressed, they're usually not that big.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal. So anyway, we sent him the details on how to do that, and that would be one way definitely to work around it.
Yeah, kind of another one is maybe having a separate ZFS data set for the GoPro videos, and then you could just unmount it, tar it up or whatever, and then you could move the files separately that way or whatever.
Well, that's another thing too. I should have said that in the email, but Warden creates all the jails or data sets by default, so you could always just ZFS send and receive.
Exactly, and then you avoid the whole
entire jail.
tarring up stage, and
Yeah.
That could definitely work as well.
Yeah, that could be just as easy. So anyway, if you have any questions on how to do that, Jeff, feel free to write us back. If you're
That
watching,
should
and
actually save a lot of time, because normally what you'd end up doing is spending 2 hours compressing it and then spending 2 hours sending it. Whereas if you could just
Sending
spend
it
2
and
hours sending it, compressed or uncompressed or
You're
whatever,
done.
you'd be done. Yeah.
Yeah, all you'd have to move over would be the Warden's meta directory in that case, and
It's like
that's like all
microscopic.
5 kilobytes. So, very simple, but so definitely several ways to skin the cat here. Pick which one works best for you or you're most comfortable with, and hopefully that all just works for you. Okay, so next up we have an anonymous one.
This is a friend and I are working on a co-located box, and we set up with 6 drives in RAID Z based on the ZFS tutorial we did way back on the show. The box is not rolled out yet, but we're running into some hardware issues before we start ripping this apart. I was hoping to back up the machine's current state for restore later if needed. Is it just a matter of plugging in an external drive and exporting a ZFS snapshot to it? What would the restore process look like? Could we boot off a FreeBSD install disk and then restore from there? So if you plug in the external drive, you can just zpool create my external drive and then the name of the drive, or the device name for the drive, and that'll create a new pool. And then you can just use ZFS snapshot of your current system, and then ZFS send that snapshot to the external drive, and now everything that's in your system will be on the external drive. And then later on, you can just start up the system off the FreeBSD install disk, create the pool on the hard drive inside the machine, and replicate it back the same way you did to back it up, just swapping the source and the destination. You'll have to recreate the boot code and stuff like that on the installed system.
The new,
so it might be easier to do.
Pretty straightforward.
It might be easier to go all the way through the install and then just replicate over top, or whichever way. But yes, ZFS makes it very easy to do that.
Yeah, when you use the send, just use the -R and give it the root zpool.
And then the name of your
so
snapshot.
It'll get all your data sets and all that.
Copy the entire drive, all the properties, all the settings, everything.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll work out well for you, and hopefully you can figure out what those hardware issues are and work that out too. He didn't say specifically what it was.
He didn't seem to need help with that. He just wanted to make sure he didn't lose his files in the process.
Yep. Well, good luck with that. Okay, next up we have Alex, and we alluded to this earlier in the show, but he writes in about packaging base, and he says, having listened to BSD Now almost since the beginning and starting to move to FreeBSD for all my non-Windows servers after dissatisfaction with the route Linux is going, plus ZFS, I find I have a question about the idea to package the base system. Part of what draws me to FreeBSD is the clear delineation between the operating system and additional software, whereas a Linux distribution is simply a random collection of packages thrown together. FreeBSD seems to have some thought put into what is in the base system and why. So my question is, why is there a push to change the base OS into a collection of packages? P.S. Is there something like Vagrant that handles jails?
So for the first part of the question, I would say that this isn't replacing the base system with a bunch of packages. It's just using the packaging tool as a way to upgrade that collection of base tools. So, the very first iterations of this will likely just be 4 or 5 packages, FreeBSD-base, FreeBSD-runtime, FreeBSD-build tools or whatever, and it'll install the whole base system as a couple of packages. The general idea eventually is to split it up a little more so that you can easily opt to exclude certain parts. Like, I don't need Kerberos, or I want to use LibreSSL instead of OpenSSL, and a couple of things like that. So eventually it'll be a little more flexible, but in general, this definitely isn't the same as breaking out each part of the base system into its own package and making it, treating it as third party instead of as part of the base system. So we'll still have the very clearly separated base and third party systems. The only difference is we're switching to using the packaging tool as the upgrade mechanism.
Sure. So it'll be kind of your one-stop shop for all upgrades.
So package upgrade will do everything instead of having to make you do it as 2 different tools.
Right. Definitely. So anyway, and of course we'll keep an eye on this going forward and bring you all the latest on this as it happens. And if you have other concerns or questions that come up, write us back and let us know what those are.
Yeah.
The second part of his question was the Vagrant one.
Have you used Vagrant? I actually don't really know what it is. I have some vague idea.
Somebody sent me some recipes for it at one point. We put it into PCBSD at 1.2 or TrueOS so that it would work out of box. But I believe it was just you run a command, it installs a bunch of stuff and turns your machine into a new environment. I don't know if that's all Assault Stack or Puppet, similar to that or not. But
I think the general idea was that basically, if you wanted to develop and you needed to a certain environment, somebody could distribute a chunk or whatever, or a recipe or something, and you would just be able to, boom, you have all the stuff you need to start working on whichever project.
X project or whatever,
For jails, there aren't really recipes for pre-built jails.
Well, Vagrant's a package, though. I suppose you could use Vagrant in the jail and say, okay, this jail has Vagrant installed now, run Vagrant with my recipe, and come back a few minutes later, and you got your jail set up the way you want. But no, I've not personally played with that at all. So.
I kind of get the same question about Docker often, and it's like, well, it sounds like the only part that's missing is some website with a bunch of pre-built jails that you could just download and use, but I don't know that makes that much sense, because if you need a web server, you package install web server and it's done.
Yeah, because you want to get the latest. Well, I think Vagrant, if I recall, does more of that, where it's like it'll package install or use whatever the other mechanism is for installing packages.
The answer is we don't know, because we don't really understand what Vagrant is.
Right? So maybe you do, or maybe somebody out there does.
Sometimes with these questions, I wish they would ask, is there something that does this, rather than naming some tool we might not be familiar with? If you listed the set of features that you needed, we might be able to explain a recipe for doing that.
Sure.
But yes, if somebody wants to explain Vagrant to us, please write us.
Definitely, that would be great. Okay. Well, let's see. So next up we have a Joris who writes in about a BSD in business. He says, hey guys, I'm currently still in school studying for a bachelor's info security degree. He said, I spend most of my spare time, I participate in hacking challenges and playing around with mostly OpenBSD servers. He said, ultimately, my goal is to become some sort of cybersecurity consultant. A big part of that is still network security, and a big part of network security is servers. Now, I like free software, but the world is big, bad, and cruel, and thus not running solely on free software. What I'm wondering is, how relevant is free software like OpenBSD and its associated projects in the enterprise world? I know there's companies like M-Tier, okay, and IX Systems, but what about the other big tech firms? I wonder if investing my time learning in depth about free software like PF is worth it, and that I'm not going to be stuck using Juniper, Barracuda, Cisco stuff my entire life.
It's kind of interesting that he mentions those specific things because Juniper appliances are almost all based on FreeBSD. And most of Cisco's firewalls are in fact based on FreeBSD. A lot of these things use open source in them as well.
Sure.
McAfee's firewall was based in FreeBSD. There's tons of them. OpenBSD is in all kinds of things. PF is built into OS 10 and iOS and lots of other things. So yes, open source definitely does pervade all throughout the enterprise world. And sometimes the enterprise doesn't even know that it's actually using BSD because they just bought a Juniper or a Cisco or whatever to do it. But yes, I would definitely say that knowing this stuff is very valuable for all that kind of thing.
I think it's becoming more so in today's day and age too. I think what we're seeing is the trend to push to open source, and businesses trusting that maybe a little bit more in light of all the security stuff that's come out in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you compare running a Cisco ASA to running something like a pfSense, you can just add more features more easily on a pfSense because you have a whole computer there. And oftentimes, some generic computers to run an open source thing cost a lot less than the very specialized thing that Cisco is going to try to sell you with many more zeros in the price tag. And when you can add, some DNS encryption or a squid proxy or whatever to your firewall, you just get that much more power.
Okay, well, I hope we answered your question there, Joris. So next up, we do have a little bit of mailing list gold, kind of an example of code review. And I don't know if you can show that on the screen here, Alan, but this is from OpenBSD. And interesting example here, in the OpenBSD world, a lot of times they will send in an OK. So they will basically say, here's a code review. I'd like somebody to take a look at this before I commit it. And in this case, we're looking at a new port, multimedia py-pafy. It's a small library. It lets you download YouTube videos in the command line. And the interesting part is at the very end, just grab the latest BSD Now video with it on AMD 64. So it must work if they was able to grab our video successfully. So that is very cool. Well, thanks for doing that, Brian, and mentioning us there on OpenBSD.
Yeah,
we need to see more commit logs like that.
Somebody said had a problem with the package description and suggested a small fix to it. But yes, if you've ever read the commit logs for OpenBSD, we link to them quite often, you'll see during a commit at the bottom, it'll just say OK and then a list of names. And those are people that okayed it. In FreeBSD, there's something similar. You'll see reviewed by in a list of people or approved by, depending on, if somebody's under mentorship, everything they commit has to be approved. During the getting close to a release, release engineering has to approve every change to the branch. And, certain changes to the ports, and port manager has to approve them and so on. But so it's very similar. Just it is funny to end the a request to make a change, which is OK ?
Right.
But also, yes, they have a very specific test of the application to make sure it worked was grabbing the latest BSD Now to watch.
You guys do that with more ports. That's awesome. Okay, well, as we wrap up here, of course, we want to let you guys know to send your questions or show ideas or any stories maybe you found while you were surfing the net or something that you guys know you're doing. Maybe write about it, send it in to us. Even if you don't have time to post a blog article or anything else, if you just want to send us a quick blurb like, hey, we're doing this, maybe we can mention that in a future episode. So send that
also,
to
especially if you're having a user group meeting or something.
Yes.
I'd love to see more people getting to meet up.
Yeah, we'd like to promote those, definitely, because it's always great. I mean, it's fun to sit here at home and work on this stuff, but actually getting out and meeting people and having FaceTime with folks is really important. So send in any of those ideas or questions to feedback@bsdnow.tv, and we would appreciate that. And of course, if if you're brave, do a video too. Let us know what you do with BSD and how it's great for advocacy and promotion. Send it all to us so that we can get it on a future episode. And we will be back next week with a regular full episode. So be over here and stay tuned for that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.